Greetings, all. Welcome back to another episode of the Neuroscience of Improvisation. I'm your host, Bradley Vines, and today we have a truly exceptional guest. Christian Howes is a renowned violinist, educator, and entrepreneur. He's a classically trained musician who has attained prominence as an improviser. Chris has developed a systematic and comprehensive approach to teaching improvisation, empowering musicians of all levels to unlock their innate musical creativity. He integrates insights from meditation and yoga into his pedagogy, adding a unique dimension to the learning process. Today, we have the opportunity to explore the depths of Christian Howes' unique musical philosophy. Prepare yourself to expand your musical horizons.
Would this program support exploring consciousness through music?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. Wow, this is wonderful. So delighted to have this chance to chat with you, Chris. Let's just jump right in. You have helped so many musicians to discover and nurture their voices as improvisers. I would love to know if you can share what you've seen in terms of the effects that improvising has had on their lives, on them as people. If you have any specific examples, of course, that'd be amazing to hear about.
Sure, yeah. I've worked with a wide range of musicians from amateur, like adult beginners, and also like elite classical players, because it tends to be a lot of bowed string players. And, it's really coming out of my own experience from when I was young and I was a classically trained player, but I felt really unsure about improvisation. I felt insecure about it. I felt like it was a complete mystery. And and then I kind of beat myself up about it, and I was either in denial about it or just beating myself up. And then, so for a long time, I've been trying to seek the place that I think I've kind of finally found, which is like just accepting myself for who I am and where I'm at as a musician. And so lately, that's been really what I've been focused on with the musicians that I help, and just seeing that a lot of them suffer from these similar things. Like they could be a totally elite musician, classical musician, but they're just really afraid about improvisation. And it's not just improvisation, it's like harmony, it's like different stylistic languages or rhythmic contexts. So I actually break up these different things into separate problems. Because I think that when people try to improvise over a harmonic structure or a rhythmic structure or a song that they don't know, the problem is not improvisation. The problem is they don't know that stuff. And so what I've been really doing is trying to help people with improvisation by giving them problems or situations that are easy for them to deal with, like at their level. And what it does is when people go through that training, with me, if they come to like my Zoom classes or my retreats or whatever, they feel better about themselves. They have more clarity. And I think one of the central reasons is because if you're like a well-trained classical musician, then and you can't improvise, well, I think a lot of people, they make an assumption that it means they're not a good musician. Like if I'm a great musician, I should be able to improvise. I should just be able to hear my way to do it. But if I can't do that, there's something wrong with me, or everybody's going to see that I'm a fraud, that I'm a fake. This gets to the heart of the problem, though, of us like putting our self-worth with our musical ability and then having these unfair expectations that we set for ourselves. So I try to give people a process, but as a gateway to hopefully help them then feel better about themselves. And what I've been doing more, and I know why I'm so interested in your work in the last year or two, is actually using improvisation to facilitate a more meditative state and actually giving people like mindful prompts while they're playing, kind of like a yoga teacher would, or like a martial arts teacher, or like a meditative, like guided meditation would, like giving them constant reminders to focus their intention on their breath, on their body, um, and giving them just kind of like, I don't know, mantras or quotes to hold on to so that they can try to develop a more self-appreciation.
I was going to ask you about your interest in meditation and how you're integrating that into your practice and teaching and mentoring of improvisers. So that's amazing. So you're finding ways to give them cues to help maintain the state of mind that's free of judgment and that's involved in the music and spontaneous. Is that the idea?
Yeah, I mean, we
Yeah.
could even try it. Like if people are listening, if they have their instrument, like I could even show you what it looks like.
Great, please.
Okay, so anybody that's listening, what I want you to do is you can either sing or you can play your instrument, and I'm going to try to guide you through a meditation just for like 1 minute. All right. So take your instrument or prepare your voice, and just before you start to play, I just want you to take a second and ground yourself. Just breathe. Just notice your breath, and maybe set an intention for what you want to do in the next minute. How do you want to feel? What kind of energy do you want to create? Is it peaceful energy? Do you want to feel more balanced? Do you want to feel integrated? Do you want to feel competent? Do you want to feel confident? Do you want to feel strong? Just think about that for a second. And now, in just a second, I'm going to ask you to choose one note, and then I want you to just hold that note. In just a second, I'm going to tell you to just pick that one note and then just play it. Okay, ready? Take the one note and just play it for a long time, about 20 seconds. Go ahead. And as you're playing that note, I want you to just focus on your breath. If you're bowing your violin, just keep your bow moving. If you're holding a note on the piano, maybe you just keep pressing the note whenever you want. If you're blowing a note in your horn, maybe you run out of breath and then you just play again. Just notice your breath. When you're ready, change the note and just hold the note for a long time. Notice your breath. Maybe notice your shoulders, your neck. If there's any tension in your face, just notice it. And if you want, you can change the note again. Just change the note. Any note you want. You can notice your sound. Notice your intonation. Notice your vibrato. When you're ready, change the note again. If you need to take a breath or take your bow off the string, go ahead and do so. Start another note. Hold that note. Notice whether you're getting louder, whether you're getting softer. And come back to your breath and come back to your intention. And when you're ready, stop playing. That's an example.
Oh, that's fascinating. I was playing in my mind, imagining playing while you were doing that, and it's amazing that the next note kind of just came to me. I imagined the next fingering and the next note I wanted to play when you said, now play another note. And then it just comes, it feels like it kind of connects with something natural when you're dealing with it that way. It's happening of its own. You're going with the flow, and there's no need to think hard about this. It's what is emerging. So that seems like a really interesting way to move people into that state of mind, non-judgmental, open to associations and natural progressions that are going to emerge from their non-conscious. Is that kind of what you're looking for, or what do people say about this approach, and how do you think about it?
Yeah, so I think there's two parts of it. So one is I'm trying to develop this kind of language of and the arc of like a guided meditative practice, such as they do in martial arts or yoga, right? There's these common prompts that people give if you go to a yoga class. It's like, notice where you are right now, recognize that wherever you are right now, that's enough, that you're exactly where you need to be, you
Mm.
know, um, bringing your attention to things and practicing bringing your attention, centering on the breath, you know, other little mantras that people say that I think are
Mm.
really helpful for facilitating that positive mindset. So that's part of it that I'm trying to learn. But the other part of it that I think is a kind of like a secret to giving people success with improvisation is specificity.
Mm.
Um, really limiting people's choices. So I'll give you an example. Like, and I think that jazz studies really blows it in a major way on a lot of levels from a
Mm.
standpoint of bringing people into the fold. Um, Not everybody, but as a general rule, um, everybody's heard about like the blues clinic, like where it's like, hey, let me teach you the pentatonic scale. Okay, now here's a blues, and this is what it is, and now just use the notes in that pentatonic scale and just play whatever you want, right?
Mm.
And there can be some limited success with that, but I find that more often there's not enough specificity. Number one, it's too much choice.
Mm.
So in my case, like in the case of what I just did, part of the reason that works is because I said pick a note and play it now. There's a lot of specificity there. That's very different than saying play whatever you want and choose from this scale.
Mm.
So there would be other ways I could do that though. Like I could say like, you know, play one note recurring at this tempo, da, 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 or choose from these three notes and play this recurring tempo. So there's a lot of ways that I find to give people specific parameters, many more ways. And so those are kind of the two sides. One side of it is that I'm trying to give people these mindful prompts. The other side is that I'm giving them different, what I call forms, elemental forms where they can have absolute success at improvisation. In the same way that, like, if you go to yoga, you're doing poses, they're forms. Like, standing mountain pose is like literally like, well, anybody who has two legs can do it,
Mm.
right? Like, you can just stand.
Mm.
And so it's in that standing that then you can find expression, but it's because you're comfortable because you know you can do it. And it's the same thing with down dog or like, whatever the different poses are. Like I can't do them well, but I can do them. And with
Mm.
that constant affirmation of the teacher that just breathe in the pose, you settle
Mm.
into a deeper sense of confidence and ease. And then when you practice it over and over again, you get better at it. So
Mm.
there's no need to be able to play giant steps. It doesn't matter.
Mm.
I don't know if I answered your question or if I deviated too
Oh,
much.
definitely. And it does align with the research on the neuroscience of improvisation in that there's evidence that even just subtle, small changes can lead to significant changes in brain activity. So, research looking at playing pre-composed music that's been practiced and rehearsed in a certain way versus playing that same music, but with an improvisatory mindset or being more spontaneous, maybe stretching certain notes or adjust the dynamics or introduce maybe a little grace note here and there. And just having that different approach leads to a change in brain activity that's unique to the improvisatory state. You're getting to the point of recognizing that we kind of have these ideas that to improvise is to play complex music and very challenging music, whereas actually to enter into these different states of mind, just very simple structures and contexts and changes can totally alter our experience.
Yeah, and then one of the things I do is I really separate learning from improvising. So like
Mm,
because if you want to play giant steps or if you want to play blues or like you know then there has to be a lot of learning that takes place. But I think so many people they try to improvise before they've done the learning. And so
mm,
what I like to give students is like, okay, here's ways to like learn material, and then here's a process for improvising over in a context where you're completely comfortable. Like let's say another student might be comfortable enough with like the C major scale in extended range. Like this is C, but I want to play C in extended range on the violin, which is here. Right? So let's say a student is comfortable. If they are comfortable with that, then I might say, okay, so choosing from just those notes, play in a recurring rhythm, you know, like quarter notes. On and on and on. And I might ask them to do it for like at least a minute, or maybe 2 minutes, because I think just like yoga, if you do a pose for like 8 seconds, it's not the same. You don't really get the benefit unless you do it, a
mm,
lot, or longer. And
mm.
so I'll ask them to do something like that. But again, there's many more variations, but they're within their comfort zone. But a lot of times, what musicians will do when I ask them to play like that exercise is they'll try to make like a melody that someone would sing or that they think should be perfectly formed somehow, or that it sounds like something. Like they'll play like
Mm.
which I'm not asking them to make a song that sounds like a song with a chord program. Like I'm not asking that. I'm
Yeah.
literally like, and then I'll tell them like, actually try to play the most wrong note you can. You
Mm.
know. Because then I feel that'll actually open them up more because there's a tension that they're feeling about. They're trying to do something else. They're trying to compose this masterpiece on the spot, or they're trying to internalize some like pre-plan some chord progression. That's not the exercise. The exercise is to be in the form.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like in the purest sense.
That's beautiful, and I really haven't seen this anywhere. So this is your creation. This approach to developing improvisation, or where did you learn this or come up with this?
Well, I mean, I was really kind of wrestling with these, because as a classical musician, the only all I had was like the things I'd heard, which was very melodic as a violinist, but there was no harmonic understanding beneath it. Like I had studied Bartok string quartets and Prokofiev and played all this like Berg and stuff like that in
Mm,
orchestra, and like plus obviously Mozart and Beethoven and all that stuff. But I heard a lot of this like modern classical just melodies. I could find those shapes. It was a lot easier for me to just melodically listen for that, and I was like, I can't get this harmony thing, especially with a single note or mainly single note instrument. It's like it's hard to
mm,
like hear the song with all the
sure.
harmonic locations. So I would just explore, I guess, what you might say is chromatic improvisation or 12 tone improvisation, because I just wanted to find a way to just develop a language. So, but it's been a long process to come to this point of really refining like a method, you know.
Yeah, that it must, because it does feel refined and kind of broken down to the bare bones of what is musical spontaneity, what is being present and being creative in the moment, and what's necessary for that. The most basic elements that then have within them, all of the magic that you can experience at any scale of musical creation. So I find that really fascinating. And how does your method does is that where I mean I can imagine just being there. Uh, is there a trajectory to the learning where the forms enable people to people that are learning this approach to improvise together and how
Yeah.
does it build? Yeah. Mm,
Well, absolutely. Like,
mm,
so what's interesting about this is I'm glad you asked that question because like, well, there's two kinds of building, I guess, in my mind, because um if the question is, well, how do you build from that into being able to play giant steps? The answer is you take separate time where you're just learning material. Like, so for example, like practice voice leading two chords back and forth, really exhaustively until you can do those and then you can improvise over that small amount of material, which like, the pianist Bill Evans famously talked about that he would just have a very small amount of material and for an hour he would practice. That's what he would practice. So he was practicing a
mm,
very small amount of material. But when you separate learning from improvising, then it's just like, okay, now I'm practicing, you know, voice leadings. That's memorization. And actually, if it's like, okay, I have 15 minutes that I'm working on voice leading, that's pretty doable. Then I've got 15 minutes that I'm doing improvisation on something that I know really well,
mm,
whether that's out of a key signature or not, whether it's over like a simple chordal voice leading pattern or something like that, right? Or a rhythmic
mm,
pattern, whatever. So that's one way that we build. But also in this process of this mindful improvisation, we're trying to reinforce for people that don't try to be somewhere where you're not. Be where you are. And be like Victor Wooten said in the music lesson, like second chapter, he said, never lose the groove in order to find a note. And the discipline of playing within your means. Everybody's trying to like play faster or be more complex or be more interesting. And it's like, no, you'll be so much more musical if you just take less chances and do what you can do well. Like everybody knows this, like great musicians know this, right?
mm,
Um, so just reinforcing this, like don't quit trying to be somebody you're not, accept where you are and and
mm,
and and have a state of peacefulness when you're playing. Have a state of confidence, of restraint, of discipline. And some of the things like Bobby Floyd, who's a great B3 organ player and jazz pianist who toured with Ray Charles. He's a legend. University of the Streets, Columbus, Ohio. One of the things when I was learning from him was that like every note he plays is in rhythm. So for example, like
mm,
I will set for myself if I'm improvising, I will set as one metric or even the only metric. It doesn't matter what I play, but every note I play will be in rhythm. And if I adhere to that standard, like it'll be in time, right? If I adhere to that standard, it means that I have to not play. And so
mm,
holding people to not playing is actually more important. And but you could say the
mm,
same thing about playing in the changes or playing complete phrases or playing with a good sound or whatever. It's like whatever standard you're going to hold yourself to, have the discipline to not play unless you're going to play that way.
mm,
So that's one side of building. But the other side of the way I would answer your question is like you can have two people play free notes together and it's very interesting. Like I can pretend to be two people. I say, well, both people are going to play together in time, just random notes.
mm,
And if two people do that together and they're listening to each other, like it is musical, it's beautiful. And the reason
Mm,
why is because they're playing together, they're matching their sound, they're playing in tune, there's a human intention, there's a unity with it. So that's already building music that's totally spontaneous. It has a form and it's enough. It's enough. Just like
mm,
if you see a tree out your window, that tree is enough. The tree's not lesser than the other tree on the other side. It's just a different tree, but it's beautiful.
mm.
It's as you were saying, like a found object. Maybe that was our other conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, I mean, it's an enormous grocery store of food for thought, and I think it's really great what you're doing. And so, how can people get involved in learning through your method? And I know you're on the East Coast, more or less. And do you have a presence elsewhere in the country, or is that all done via online interaction? Or how do people connect with you and take part and learn from you? And,
Thanks for asking. I'm in
yeah,
Asheville, North Carolina, but I do a lot online. I teach a lot of people online in a lot of different ways. One thing I recommend people do is go to my YouTube channel and just play with my free play along videos. I've got hundreds of free play along videos. A lot of them are like play after me, so I'll play like a short phrase and you can play it back after me. I have them different styles, for different levels, so easy to advanced. And but I also do Zoom classes where I'm guiding people through improvisational exercises over 7 weeks, taking them through my whole curriculum. So you can go to Christian House. You can find me there. You can go to my YouTube channel, christianhouse.com, or YouTube. Probably the easiest way is to go to my website, christianhouse.com. Thanks for asking.
sure. Absolutely. And thank you for sharing that and playing as well. What a treat. I love your playing on your podcast episodes, what you share. The musical excerpts are always wonderful to hear. So it's great to hear it live, indeed. Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Chris. It's a real pleasure and an honor indeed to have you in conversation. So much appreciated.
I appreciate you. Thanks a lot, Bradley.
Yeah.